So it's interesting that the previous U.S. president who visited China who brought some dissents back to the United States, but this time Trump brought 3 men who did the shoplifting in China, and he tweeted about it, and the 3 men apologized to China and thanked President Trump. So what do you think of this choice reflect Trump's policy on human rights issue, and how was it done before Trump?
Well, I think that any president would have done basically what Trump did with respect to basketball players, would have gone on sheet and said, you got to let him go. Now, what I was surprised by is actually if President Obama had been around when this happened, I think he would have said, I'm not coming unless they're released. Not, I hope they get released after I leave while they are languishing under house arrest. And the Chinese were never going to keep them a long time. So I think he should have said, look, if you want to blow off this whole visit right after your 19th Party Congress, be our guest, but get those guys on a plane now. So I was a bit surprised by the way that Trump executed it. Nonetheless, they came home. I don't think Obama would have tweeted afterwards, please say thank you to me. Look what I just did for you. On the dissident side, so there are two features of any trip. One is choreography around how human rights is raised and discussed. And the second is how the press conference is run, so that journalists be allowed to ask questions, not just of the American president, but be allowed to ask questions, hard questions of the Chinese president as well. In both cases, Trump took those things off the table. He did not raise human rights, either publicly or privately, whether dissidents or other issues inside China, and he had a press conference with no questions. So the signal that he sent to the Chinese was, this is not a relevant issue in our bilateral relationship for the time that I'm president of the United States. Now, from China's perspective, that's all to the good. They see it as an irritant, something they've had to manage for and deal with, and they consistently worked to reduce the space that that set of issues gets. Trump has basically just said, we're taking all of that off the table. I think it's actually pretty rare for U.S. presidents to bring back dissidents. Hillary Clinton, when I worked for her as Secretary of State, was on a trip to China, and just before she got there, the blind dissident, Chen Guangcheng, came into our embassy. And so we had to resolve that case, but that was pretty unique. I think more typically what ends up happening is just that we press the case on behalf of political prisoners or on behalf of human rights. We raise the issue publicly. Maybe we get a dialogue set up around human rights or around rule of law. But you usually don't get tangible outcomes. I can't recall a time when President Obama actually won. I guess it was helped with him. But there is a stark difference between the way President Obama addressed this whole set of issues and the way that President Trump has. And that all played to Xi Jinping. I mean, I think almost across the board, everything Trump did was exactly what Xi Jinping wanted him to do. I think the Chinese, at the end of this visit, were thinking, how could that possibly have gone better? And the cost to them essentially was some pageantry. And then Xi could just bask in the adulation of Donald Trump without really doing anything substantial.